The large meeting room in the Galactic Council building was full of worried voices. 12 different alien species had sent their best leaders to talk about the biggest problem the galaxy had ever seen. The room was round and made of shiny metal, with a huge screen in the center showing star maps and battle reports. Admiral Zektar stood up slowly. He was tall and scary-looking, with dark scales covering his body and yellow eyes that glowed in the dim light. He belonged to the Vorthic Empire, one of the strongest military powers in the galaxy. When he spoke, his deep voice made everyone. "Listen, friends, we are in great danger," he said, pointing at the screen. "The Void Swarm has destroyed 7 star systems in just 1 month. These creatures are not like any enemy we have fought before. They eat everything they find and make more of themselves from what they consume." The screen showed horrible pictures of dead planets and broken ships floating in space. The Void Swarm looked like giant insects made of living metal and flesh. They moved together like a dark cloud, destroying everything in their path. A being made of living crystal spoke next. Her name was Prism 7, and she represented the crystalline hierarchy. When she talked, her voice sounded like music, but sad music. "Our combined fleets have thousands of ships. We should be able to stop them if we work together." "That is the problem," said another voice. This came from Ambassador Valtara, who lived in water and had to wear a special suit to breathe air. Her people were called the Aquatic Dominion. "We have never fought together before. Each of our species uses different weapons and different ways of fighting. We do not know how to work as one army," the aliens argued for hours. Some wanted to attack the Void Swarm right away. Others thought they should build better defenses and wait. A few suggested running away to other parts of the galaxy. But no one could agree on what to do. Then a soft beeping sound came from the communication system. The big screen changed to show a human face. The man looked older, with gray hair and tired eyes. He wore a simple blue uniform with no fancy decorations. His name was Captain Jake Morrison, and he represented the Human Colonial Defense Force. "Hello, Council members," Morrison said in a calm voice. "I am speaking for all of humanity. We want to help you fight the Void Swarm. We know this is dangerous, but we think we can be useful." For a moment, the room was completely quiet. Then, slowly, the aliens began to laugh. Not mean laughter, but the kind adults make when a child says something cute and silly. Admiral Zektar smiled, showing his sharp teeth. "Captain Morrison, we appreciate your offer, really we do. But your species only has 47 ships. The Void Swarm has already destroyed fleets with 1,000 ships. Perhaps humans should focus on getting their people to safety instead of trying to fight." The crystal being, Prism 7, made a sound like gentle bells ringing. "Captain, your courage makes us proud. But 47 ships against millions of these creatures. It would be like throwing pebbles at a mountain. We cannot let you sacrifice yourselves for nothing." Ambassador Valtara nodded her head, which looked strange. In her water-filled helmet, the human fleet would be destroyed before they could even shoot their weapons. "We have seen these creatures adapt to any attack. They learn and change faster than we can fight them." Other aliens in the room began to talk among themselves. Most of them seemed to agree that humans were too weak to help. Some felt sorry for them. Others thought it was noble that such a small species wanted to try. "Poor humans," said one alien with 4 arms. "They do not understand how terrible this enemy is." "We should prepare a memorial for them," suggested another. "They will die bravely, but they will still die." Captain Morrison listened to all of this without changing his expression. He did not look angry or hurt. He just waited for them to finish talking. When the room became quiet again, he spoke. "I understand your concerns," he said. "You think we are too small and weak to make a difference. That is okay. We will go to the Kepler Nebula area anyway, just in case we can help somehow." The Kepler Nebula? Admiral Zektar looked confused. "That is far from the main battle zone. What could you possibly do there?" "We will wait and see," Morrison replied. "Sometimes small things can be more useful than they appear." With that, the communication ended. The human captain's face disappeared from the screen, leaving the aliens to stare at empty space. The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Admiral Zektar spoke in a sad voice. "Brave creatures, they have no idea what they are facing. The void swarm will destroy them in minutes." "Should we send some of our ships to help them?" asked the small alien with green skin. "No," said Prism 7. "If we send ships to protect the humans, we will have fewer ships to defend the main systems. We cannot risk the lives of millions to save 47 human vessels." "Besides," added Veltara, "what could we do? If our big fleets cannot stop the void swarm, a few extra ships will not matter." The aliens continued their meeting, planning how to arrange their thousands of ships for the coming battle. They talked about weapons and shields, about which species should fight where, and about how to coordinate their different technologies, but they did not talk about the humans anymore. In their minds, the 47 human ships were already dead. They were a sad footnote in the story of the galaxy's greatest battle. What the aliens did not know was that Captain Morrison had not been speaking from Earth, or any human colony. He had been on the bridge of a ship called the UES Defiance, which was floating in space near the Kepler Nebula. Around his ship, 46 other human vessels waited in the darkness. After the communication ended, Morrison turned to a young woman sitting at a control panel. Her name was Lieutenant Amy Brooks, and she was his tactical officer. She had been listening to the alien conversation with a small smile on her face. "Signal the fleet, Amy," Morrison said quietly. "Tell them it is time to show the galaxy what a small human fleet can really do." Brooks nodded and began typing on her keyboard. Her smile grew bigger as she worked. "Yes, sir. All ships are ready and waiting. The void swarm will not know what hit them." Around the Defiance, the other human ships began to move. They did not look like the sleek, beautiful vessels that other species built. Human ships were rough and angular, covered in thick armor and bristling with weapons. They looked like they were built for war, not for show. The 47 ships spread out through the Kepler Nebula, hiding in the thick clouds of gas and dust. Their engines ran quietly and their weapons were powered down. To anyone watching from far away, they looked like a small, frightened fleet trying to hide from a terrible enemy, but appearances can be deceiving. The human ships were not hiding because they were afraid. They were hiding because they were predators, and predators know how to wait for the right moment to strike. In the command center of each ship, human crews prepared for battle. They checked their weapons, reviewed their plans, and waited for orders. These were not the weapons that other species used. These were not normal shields or typical energy beams. These were the weapons that humanity had developed in secret, weapons that could destroy entire star systems if used carelessly, weapons that violated every law of civilized warfare, weapons that could end the void swarm forever. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the smallest fleets carry the biggest surprises, and sometimes the species that everyone underestimates turns out to be the most dangerous of all. 3 days passed after the council meeting. During those days, the alien fleets moved into position near the Epsilon Centauri system. Thousands of ships from 12 different species formed a massive defensive line across space. Each species had brought their best vessels and their most experienced crews. Admiral Zektar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conquest of Stars. The ship was huge and powerful, with weapons that could destroy planets. Around it, hundreds of other Vorthak vessels waited in perfect formation. Their dark hulls gleamed in the light of distant stars. "Sir," called out his tactical officer, a younger Vorthak with bright green scales, "our long-range sensors are picking up the void swarm. They are bigger than we expected." Zektar looked at the main screen and felt his blood turn cold. The void swarm was not just large, it was enormous. Billions of bioships moved through space like a living storm cloud. Each creature was the size of a battle cruiser, and they moved together with perfect coordination. "How many?" he asked, though he dreaded the answer. "Too many to count accurately, sir. Our computers estimate at least 10 billion individual bioships, and more are being created as they consume matter from space." The admiral's claws gripped the arms of his command chair. Even with all their combined fleets, the aliens only had about 50,000 ships. They were outnumbered by more than 200,000 to 1. What about the humans? He asked. Trying to distract himself from the hopeless numbers, the tactical officer checked his instruments. They are still in the Kepler Nebula, sir. Their ships are scattered throughout the gas clouds. Energy signatures are very low. They appear to be hiding. Zektar shook his head sadly. At least they are smart enough to stay out of the way. When this battle is over, there will be nothing left to rescue. On the bridge of the Aquatic Dominion flagship, Ambassador Veltara watched the same sensor readings with growing fear. Her people were excellent at underwater combat, but space battles were not their strength. Still, they had brought 300 of their best ships to help defend the galaxy. The bioships are adapting even before the battle begins, reported her science officer. They are changing their whole composition based on our weapon signatures. They know what we are going to shoot at them. Veltara's gills fluttered with anxiety. How is that possible? The Void Swarm appears to share a collective consciousness, Ambassador. When one learns something, they all learn it instantly. They have been studying our weapons for days. The crystalline hierarchy ships hung in space like beautiful sculptures made of living gemstone, but even their elegant beauty could not hide the fear that Prism 7 felt. Her people had never faced anything like this before. All ships came. Admiral Zektar's voice over the communication system. The Void Swarm will reach our position in 1 hour. Prepare for battle. Remember, we fight not just for our own species, but for all life in the galaxy. The alien fleets readied their weapons and raised their shields, energy weapons charged with deadly power. Missile tubes loaded with their most destructive warheads. Fighter craft launched from carrier ships, filling space with thousands of small attack vessels. But as the minutes passed, doubt crept into every alien mind. The Void Swarm was simply too large. Even if every shot hit its target, even if every weapon worked perfectly, there were not enough bullets in the galaxy to stop what was coming. Then the Void Swarm arrived. The bioships came out of hyperspace, like a plague of insects. They were horrible to look at, with hulls that pulsed like living flesh and weapons that grew from their bodies like organic tumors. They moved with fluid grace like sharks swimming through an ocean of stars. All ships, engage the enemy. Admiral, Zektar commanded. The battle began with a thunderous roar of weapons fire. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the bioships with devastating force. Explosions bloomed like deadly flowers as missiles found their targets. For a moment, it seemed like the aliens might have a chance, but then the bioships began to adapt. The creatures that had been damaged by energy weapons changed their hull structure, becoming resistant to that type of attack. Those hit by missiles developed armor that could absorb explosive force. Within minutes, weapons that had been highly effective became almost useless. They are learning faster than we can hurt them, reported the tactical officer on Zektar's ship. Our energy weapons are now only causing minimal damage. Switch to kinetic weapons, the admiral ordered. Fire physical projectiles. The alien fleets changed their attack patterns, using bullets and railgun slugs instead of energy beams. Again, this worked for a few minutes. Then the bioships adapted to kinetic attacks as well, developing hulls that could absorb and redirect physical impacts. Worse, the bioships were fighting back. Their organic weapons fired streams of acid that ate through alien armor. They launched spores that took control of enemy systems. Some of the larger bioships opened their mouths and simply swallowed smaller alien vessels whole. We are losing ships faster than we can count them, reported Veltara from her flagship. My people are dying and we are not even hurting the enemy. The same here, added Prism 7, her musical voice filled with despair. They are consuming our vessels and using the materials to create more of themselves. Admiral Zektar watched his fleet being destroyed piece by piece. The Void Swarm was not just winning. It was feeding on the battle, growing stronger with every ship it consumed. Where are the humans? He demanded. Are they going to watch us die while they hide in that nebula? As if in answer to his question, the sensors detected a sudden spike in energy from the Kepler nebula. The human ships were powering up their systems. All 47 vessels activated their engines and weapons simultaneously. "This is Captain Morrison," came a calm voice over the emergency communication channel. "All Allied vessels prepare to witness why humanity survived the unification wars. You are about to see what we really are." The first human ship to emerge from the nebula was called the UES Reaper. It was commanded by Captain Lisa Martinez, a stern woman with short black hair and scars on her face from old battles. Her ship looked nothing like the graceful vessels of other species. It was angular and brutal, covered in thick armor plating, and bristling with weapons that looked like they had been designed by someone who understood only destruction. "Target acquired," Martinez said in a voice as cold as space itself. "Beginning attack sequence." The Reaper fired its main weapons. But what came out was not energy beams or missiles. Instead, simple metal rods shot toward the bioships at incredible speed. The Void Swarm's living hulls began to adapt, preparing to absorb the kinetic impact, just as they had absorbed all the other weapons. But these were not ordinary metal rods. The projectiles struck the bioships and exploded with a force that defied understanding. But it was not the explosion that destroyed the creatures, it was what came after. Each rod contained something that attacked the bioships at the molecular level, breaking apart their living tissue faster than they could regenerate. "Impossible," whispered Admiral Zektar. "How did they do that?" More human ships emerged from the nebula. The UES Harbinger, under Captain Robert Kelly, fired strange spherical weapons that created tiny black holes. The gravitational fields ripped the bioships apart from the inside out. The UES Vindicator, commanded by Captain Helen Wright, launched swarms of microscopic machines that ate the bioships from within, reproducing themselves using the consumed material. But the most terrifying sight was the UES Retribution, Captain Danny Foster's ship. It did not fire conventional weapons at all. Instead, it projected a field of pure entropy that caused the bioships to age thousands of years in seconds. The creatures turned to dust and scattered in the solar wind. "What kind of weapons are those?" demanded Prism 7. "The kind that work," replied Captain Morrison from the Defiance. "The kind we built when we realized that being small and weak was not enough to survive in this galaxy." The Void Swarm, which had never encountered an enemy it could not adapt to, began to panic. Their bioships tried to change and evolve, but the human weapons attacked them in ways that made adaptation impossible. You cannot adapt to having your molecules torn apart. You cannot evolve resistance to accelerated time. You cannot defend against weapons that rewrite the laws of physics. For the first time in their existence, the Void Swarm began to retreat. "All human vessels," Captain Morrison's voice rang out with deadly authority. "Pursue the enemy. Show them what happens when they threaten our galaxy." The 47 human ships moved through space like avenging angels, each one a masterpiece of destructive engineering. They did not just fight the Void Swarm, they erased it from existence with clinical precision and terrifying efficiency. The Alien Alliance watched in stunned silence as their saviors revealed themselves to be the most dangerous species in the galaxy. The humans had not been hiding because they were afraid. They had been hiding because they were predators, and now it was time to hunt. The Alien Alliance watched in complete shock as the human fleet tore through the Void Swarm like a sword cutting through paper. What had seemed like 47 small, weak ships now revealed themselves to be something far more terrifying. Each human vessel carried weapons that should not have existed. On the bridge of the UES Defiance, Captain Morrison coordinated the attack with the calm precision of a master chess player. His fingers moved across control panels as he directed, his ships like a conductor leading an orchestra of destruction. "Beta Squadron, deploy the quantum mines around the enemy's left flank," he ordered. "Gamma Squadron, prepare the dimensional rifts. Alpha Squadron, maintain suppression fire on the main cluster." Lieutenant Brooks sat at her station, watching the tactical display with amazement. The bioships that had easily adapted to every alien weapon were being destroyed faster than they could reproduce. Sir, the bioships are trying to adapt to our weapons. Some are showing resistance to the entropy fields. Morrison nodded calmly. Expected. They always try to adapt. Switch to Phase 2 protocols. Signal Captain Torres on the Nemesis. Across the battlefield, the UES Nemesis received the signal. This ship was different from all the others. While the other human vessels looked like warships, the Nemesis looked like a research vessel. It was smaller and less armored, but it carried humanity's most closely guarded secret. Captain Maria Torres was a quiet woman with gray hair and intelligent eyes. She had spent her entire life working on projects that no one else was allowed to know about. Today, she would use knowledge that had been forbidden for centuries. Nemesis to all ships, she announced over the communication system. Clearing the battlefield for nanite deployment. All vessels withdraw to minimum safe distance. The human fleet pulled back from the void swarm as the Nemesis moved forward. Its hull opened like a flower, blooming, revealing a launching bay that contained only one weapon. What emerged looked like a simple metallic sphere, no bigger than a fighter craft. Admiral Zektar, still trying to understand what he was seeing, demanded answers. Captain Morrison, what is that device? What are you planning to do? Morrison's voice was quiet and serious when he replied. That is what we call a Grey Goose scenario, Admiral. Self-replicating nanobots programmed to consume only bioship material. We made them illegal in human space 200 years ago because they were too dangerous to use. You are using forbidden weapons? Prism 7's musical voice carried shock and horror, weapons that your own species has banned. We are using effective weapons, Morrison corrected. The void swarm does not follow any laws. When extinction is the alternative, neither do we. The metallic sphere drifted toward the center of the void swarm formation. For a moment, nothing happened. Then it exploded in a shower of microscopic machines, each one smaller than a grain of sand. The nanobots spread out like an invisible plague, attaching themselves to the bioships and beginning their deadly work. They consumed the living hulls of the creatures, breaking down the organic material molecule by molecule. But that was not the worst part. Each nanobot used the material it consumed to create exact copies of itself. Within seconds, one nanobot became 2, 2 became 4, 4 became 8. The multiplication continued at an exponential rate. The bioships tried to adapt, changing their hull composition to resist the nanobots. But the tiny machines were programmed to consume any organic matter, and they evolved faster than their targets could change. Soon, entire sections of the void swarm began to dissolve as trillions of nanobots consumed everything in their path. How do you control them? Whispered Ambassador Veltara, her voice filled with terror. How do you stop them from consuming everything in the galaxy? Morrison's expression was grim. We do not stop them. We guide them. The U.S. Pandora, commanded by Captain Rick Harrison, moved into position near the expanding cloud of nanobots. This ship carried specialized equipment that sent electromagnetic pulses through space. These pulses gave the nanobots instructions, telling them exactly what to consume and what to leave alone. The humans have weaponized extinction itself, Admiral Zektar muttered, his voice filled with awe and horror. They have turned the act of destroying life into a science. The void swarm, faced with an enemy that turned their own strengths against them, began to flee in panic. But the human fleet was not finished. Captain Morrison gave an order that would echo through galactic history. All ships, pursue and destroy, no survivors, no witnesses, no mercy. The 47 human vessels moved through space with predatory grace. Each ship was a masterpiece of destructive engineering, designed not just to win battles but to end wars permanently. The used destroyer, under Captain Sam Williams, fired streams of dark matter that unraveled the fundamental forces holding the bioships together. The UES Annihilator, commanded by Captain Beth Cooper, launched temporal bombs that trapped bioships in time loops, causing them to die over and over again for eternity. But perhaps the most horrifying weapon belonged to the UES Oblivion, Captain Mark Johnson's command. This ship did not fire any visible projectiles. Instead, it erased things from existence itself. Bioships simply stopped being, as if they had never existed in the first place. "Captain Morrison," Admiral Zektar called over the communication system, his voice shaking. "These weapons, they violate every law of physics I know. How is any of this possible?" "Physics is just a suggestion when you are desperate enough," Morrison replied. "We learned to break the rules because following them meant death." Captain Martinez from the Reaper added her voice to the conversation. "The molecular disruptors? We developed them during the resource wars when our colonies were starving and needed to break down asteroids for raw materials, the nanobots. Created when we thought an alien plague was going to wipe out Earth, the entropy fields. Our answer to time-traveling invaders from the future." The aliens listened in growing horror as the truth unfolded. Every impossible weapon had been born from desperation. Humanity had not set out to become the galaxy's most dangerous species. They had been forced into it by circumstances that would have destroyed any other civilization. "You have faced time travelers?" Prism 7 asked in disbelief. "Among other things," Captain Foster replied from the Retribution. "Shape-shifting. Parasites that could take over entire planets. Machines that could rewrite reality itself. Energy beings that fed on conscious thought. Each enemy taught us something new about destruction. The scope of human experience was staggering. While the Galactic Alliance had known relatively peaceful expansion and territorial disputes, humanity had been fighting wars against threats that most species could not even imagine. As the last of the void, swarm bioships were consumed by nanobots, or destroyed by impossible weapons, an eerie silence fell over the battlefield. Where billions of creatures had existed moments before, there was now only empty space and slowly dispersing clouds of microscopic machines. Captain Torres from the Nemesis began the cleanup process, using specialized equipment to collect and contain the nanobots before they could spread beyond the battle zone. "Nanite recovery at 90%, she reported. "Remaining units will self-destruct in 10 minutes. Admiral Zektar stared at the empty space where the greatest threat in galactic history had existed just hours before. "They are all gone, every single one." "That was the point," Morrison said simply. "When something threatens to end all life. In the galaxy, you do not wound it or drive it away. You erase it completely." The implications were terrifying. If this was what humanity considered a small fleet, what weapons did they keep hidden in their core systems? What other horrors had they developed during their violent history? "Captain Morrison," Valtara asked hesitantly, "how many more ships does humanity possess?" Morrison was quiet for a long moment before answering. "The 47 ships you have seen today represent approximately 3% of our total fleet. They are also our oldest and least advanced vessels. We brought them because we thought they would be sufficient for this threat." The silence that followed was deafening. The aliens had been saved by what humanity considered outdated technology. The real human fleet, the modern weapons, the truly dangerous ships, were still hidden somewhere in human space. "What happens now?" Prism 7 finally asked. Morrison smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. "Now we go home. The galaxy is safe. The void swarm is extinct. And humanity returns to being the small, peaceful species you have always known us to be." "Until the next time," whispered Admiral Zektar. "Until the next time," Morrison agreed. "Because that is what we do. We survive. And we make sure everyone else survives too." After the complete destruction of the void swarm, the human fleet gathered at the edge of the Kepler Nebula. The alien ships stayed far away, their crews staring in shocked silence at the empty space where billions of bioships had existed just hours before. The cleanup was almost finished, and the galaxy was safe. But no one felt like celebrating. Captain Morrison stood in the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching the recovery teams work. The nanobots had been successfully contained and were being collected by special ships designed for that purpose. The Grey Goo scenario was over, but everyone knew that nothing would ever be the same again. "Sir," Lieutenant Brooks said quietly as she approached him, "we are receiving urgent messages from the Galactic Council. They want answers about what they saw today. They sound scared." Morrison turned away from the window, his face showing the weight of what they had done. "Put them through to the main briefing room. It is time they learned the truth about what humanity really is." The holographic display came to life, showing the worried faces of the Galactic Alliance leaders. Admiral Zektar spoke first, but his voice was shaking with emotion he could barely control. "Captain Morrison, what we saw today, those weapons, they break every treaty and every law about the civilized warfare. You have used weapons that could destroy entire star systems. How could you risk so much?" Morrison looked directly at the alien admiral. "And yet, Admiral, your star systems still exist. Your people are still alive." "The Void Swarm is not." Prism 7's crystalline form pulsed with angry colors. "The nanobots alone could have consumed all life in the galaxy. You risked everything on your ability to control machines that should never have been built." "We did not risk anything," Captain Torres said from the bridge of the Nemesis. "We have been perfecting these weapons for hundreds of years. Every system has multiple safety measures. We knew exactly what we were doing." Ambassador Veltara S. Gills moved rapidly with distress. "Hundreds of years? How long has humanity been developing these terrible weapons?" Captain Harrison from the Pandora answered in a matter-of-fact voice. "Since the day we met you. Since the day we realized we were the smallest and weakest species in the galaxy. We had to adapt or die." The truth was beginning to sink in. While other species had focused on building bigger fleets and better shields, humanity had been quietly developing weapons that could end entire civilizations. Not because they wanted to conquer anyone, but because they needed to survive. "The entropy fields?" Admiral Zektar demanded. "How is such a thing even possible?" Captain Foster from the Retribution leaned toward his communication screen. "Time manipulation technology. We learned how to create areas where time moves much faster than normal. It came from our early experiments with faster-than-light travel." "The gravity bombs?" asked Prism 7, her voice filled with horror. Captain Kelly from the Harbinger shrugged. "Compressed dark matter. We learned to collect it from the empty spaces between galaxies. Once you understand how gravity works, it is just advanced engineering." "Advanced engineering?" Veltara's voice rose to a shriek. "You are using the fundamental forces of the universe as weapons." Morrison stepped forward, commanding attention from every alien leader. "Do you know what the most dangerous species in the galaxy really is? It is not the one with the biggest guns or the strongest armor. It is the one that refuses to die no matter what." He gestured toward the empty space where the Void Swarm had been. "For thousands of years, the galaxy has known peace through strength. You built large fleets and powerful weapons. You fought wars for territory and resources. But humanity has only known one kind of war, the war for survival." Captain Martinez from the Reaper joined the conversation. "Every weapon you saw today was born from desperation. The molecular disruptors? We developed them during the resource wars when our colonies were starving and we needed to break down matter for food. The nanobots? Created when we thought a killer asteroid was going to hit Earth. The entropy fields. Our answer to an alien disease that nearly wiped us out." The alien leaders listened with growing horror as the full truth emerged. Humanity had not been developing weapons of conquest. They had been creating tools of extinction, designed by a species that had faced their own extinction so many times that preventing it had become their greatest skill. "Every major human colony has faced complete destruction at least once," Morrison continued. "Our moon was shattered by alien invaders and rebuilt. Mars was consumed by a machine plague and sterilized. Europa was invaded by creatures from another dimension. Each time, we learned something new about how to kill things that should not be able to die." "You are all monsters," whispered Admiral Zektar. Morrison's expression did not change. "No, Admiral, we are survivors. And now, because of that, so are you?" The implications were staggering. If humanity's small fleet contained weapons that could destroy star systems, what did their real military look like? What other horrors were hidden in human space, waiting for the next impossible threat? Captain Torres spoke again, her voice clinical and precise. The temporal bombs create localized time loops. Anything caught in them experiences the moment of death forever. We developed them to fight enemies that could regenerate from any injury. The dark matter streams unravel atomic bonds, added Captain Williams from the destroyer. We created them when we faced machines that could rebuild themselves from any damage. The existence erasers removed targets from reality itself, said Captain Johnson from the Oblivion. We built them to fight enemies that existed in multiple dimensions. At once, each revelation was worse than the last. Humanity had faced threats that other species could not even imagine, and they had developed weapons to match. Every impossible enemy had taught them new ways to deal death. How many other species have you destroyed with these weapons? Asked Prism 7, her voice filled with dread. None, Morrison replied immediately. These weapons have never been used against any galactic species. They were created for threats from outside our reality, from other dimensions, from the spaces between stars where things exist that should not exist. Veltara looked confused. Then why did you bring them today? Because the Void Swarm was not from our galaxy either, Captain Torres explained. They came from the spaces between galaxies, consuming everything they found. They were exactly the kind of threat these weapons were designed to stop. Morrison continued, his voice growing more serious. The 47 ships you have seen today represent 3% of humanity's total fleet. But that is not the important number. The important number is that they are our oldest vessels using technology that is over 50 years out of date. The silence that followed was absolute. The aliens had been saved by what humanity considered ancient, obsolete weapons. The modern human fleet with current technology was apparently so advanced that it defied imagination. What would have happened if the Void Swarm had attacked human space directly? Veltara asked in a whisper. Morrison was quiet for a long moment. They would have encountered our border patrol. Standard defensive ships with normal weapons. Most of those ships would have been destroyed. And then? Pressed Zektar. Then they would have faced the home fleet, and there would have been no survivors anywhere in the galaxy. The meaning was clear and terrifying. The human home fleet was apparently so destructive that using it would have killed everyone, including humanity itself. We did not want to become this, Morrison said sadly. We wanted to be peaceful explorers, scientists, artists, but the universe had other plans. Every time we tried to build something beautiful, something came along to destroy it, so we learned to destroy first. You're saying you had no choice? Asked Admiral Zektar. We always had choices, Morrison replied. We could have given up. We could have accepted extinction. We could have run away to hide in some corner of the galaxy. Instead, we chose to fight. We chose to survive. We chose to make sure that nothing could ever threaten us or our friends again. The conversation ended with the aliens staring at their screens in shocked silence. They had been saved by humanity's compassion, but they had also learned that their saviors were the most dangerous beings in the universe. 3 months passed after the Void Swarm was completely destroyed. The galaxy had settled into an uneasy peace, but everything had changed. The human fleet had returned to their territory as promised, leaving behind only diplomatic ships and aid vessels to help with reconstruction. But the knowledge of what humanity possessed had changed. Galactic politics forever. Captain Morrison found himself in a position he had never wanted. He was now humanity's ambassador to the very species that had once dismissed his people as weak and insignificant. He stood in the rebuilt Galactic Council chambers, addressing a room full of beings who now looked at his species with a mixture of respect and terror. The Frontier Protection Initiative, Morrison explained, pointing to the holographic display that showed star maps and sensor networks, would establish early warning systems throughout the Outer Rim territories. If any threat similar to the Void swarm appears again, we will have advance notice and can respond quickly. Admiral Zektar, who had been much more polite in recent months, nodded slowly. His proud military bearing had been replaced by something that looked almost like humility. And humanity would lead this initiative? Morrison chose his words carefully. Humanity would contribute our experience in dealing with unusual threats. But this would be a joint effort involving all species. We have no interest in controlling the galaxy. Ambassador Veltara leaned forward in her water-filled suit. Forgive my directness, Captain, but how can we trust a species that hides weapons of mass destruction in their small fleets? Morrison's expression remained calm and patient. Because we could have used those weapons on you instead of the Void Swarm. The fact that you are here, alive and free, is proof that humanity can be trusted with power. Prism 7 posed the question that everyone was thinking. What would have happened if the Void Swarm had attacked human space first, before we even knew they existed? Morrison was quiet for a long moment, considering his answer. They would have encountered our border patrol ships first. Standard defensive vessels with normal weapons. Most of them would have been destroyed quickly. And then? Pressed Admiral Zektar. Then our automated defense systems would have activated. The Void Swarm would have faced weapons that make what you saw look like children's toys. And when it was over, there would have been nothing left of them to study or understand. The implications hung in the air like a dark cloud. The human border patrol alone would have been sufficient to stop the threat. That had nearly destroyed the entire Galactic Alliance. Captain Lisa Martinez, who had been promoted to liaison officer, added her voice to the conversation. People keep asking about our weapons, but you are missing the point. We did not develop these things because we wanted to hurt anyone. We developed them because we had to survive. She activated another holographic display that showed human colony worlds. The molecular disruptors were first used to stop a plague that was turning our people into mindless weapons. The nanobots saved Earth from an invasion by creatures that could regenerate from a single cell. The entropy fields were our answer to enemies that could travel through time to attack us before we were born. The room fell silent as the scope of human experience became clear. While the Galactic Alliance had known centuries of relative peace and prosperity, humanity had been fighting for survival against threats that most species could not even imagine. You are saying you have faced worse enemies than the Void Swarm? Asked Veltara, her voice filled with disbelief. Much worse, Morrison replied. The Void Swarm was predictable. They consumed and reproduced. We have faced enemies that could rewrite the laws of physics, manipulate consciousness itself, and exist in multiple realities at the same time. Admiral Zektar stood slowly, his massive form casting long shadows across the chamber floor. I formally apologize for my species' dismissal of human capabilities. We had no idea what you had endured. Neither did we, Morrison admitted. We thought the galaxy was full of species like us, survivors who had earned their place through struggle and determination. We were surprised to find civilizations that had never faced extinction. This revelation changed everything. The Galactic Alliance began to understand that they had been living in a peaceful bubble while humanity had been fighting wars against cosmic horrors in the dark spaces between stars. The new understanding led to dramatic changes throughout the galaxy. Trade agreements were renegotiated, with humanity receiving unprecedented access to alien markets and resources. Defense pacts were signed with human vessels serving as the ultimate deterrent against unknown threats. Research partnerships were established, though certain human technologies remained strictly classified. Most importantly, the galaxy's approach to unknown threats changed completely. The Void Swarm had been allowed to grow dangerous because no one had imagined anything so destructive could exist. Now, with humanity's example, the Galactic Alliance developed new protocols for dealing with extinction-level threats before they could become unstoppable. 6 months after the battle, Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of the UES Defiance, watching as the first joint human-alien research station was completed. The facility orbited a neutral star system and would be used to study defensive technologies. Knowledge would be shared, but the most dangerous weapons would remain safely locked away. Lieutenant Brooks joined him at the viewing window, carrying a data tablet with the latest reports. "Sir, we are receiving updates from the Outer Rim early. Warning systems. They have identified and neutralized 4 potential threats in the past month before they could develop into serious problems." Morrison nodded approvingly. "Good, the galaxy is learning to defend itself. Sir, there is something else. The Council has requested a complete inventory of human military capabilities. They want to know exactly what we possess." Morrison smiled grimly. "Tell them we will provide a list of our peacekeeping vessels. The ships that are appropriate for galactic cooperation and joint operations. What about the others?" "The others remain classified. The galaxy is not ready to know that our small fleet was actually our diplomatic escort." Brooks looked surprised. "Diplomatic escort, sir?" "The 47 ships that destroyed the Void Swarm were not warships, Lieutenant. They were the vessels we brought to make a good impression on our galactic neighbors. Our actual military fleet has never left human space." The revelation was staggering. If humanity's diplomatic escort could destroy an extinction-level threat with ease, what could their real military accomplish? As the months passed, the galaxy settled into a new normal. Human ships patrolled the Outer Rim, their crews watching. FOR threats that might emerge from the dark spaces between galaxies. Alien civilizations continued their peaceful existence, but now they knew they were protected by guardians who had faced horrors beyond imagination. The human fleet remained hidden in the depths of human space, but its legend grew with each passing day. Stories spread of weapons that could end gods, of ships that carried the power to unmake reality itself, of a species that had looked into the abyss so many times that they had become the thing that the abyss feared. Trade flourished between human and alien worlds. Cultural exchanges brought new art, music, and literature to both sides. Scientific cooperation led to advances in medicine, energy production, and space travel. The galaxy became more prosperous and peaceful than it had ever been, but in the deep monitoring stations scattered throughout human space, sensors continued their endless watch. Computer systems analyzed data from distant galaxies, searching for signs of new threats. Research facilities worked on weapons that pushed the boundaries of what was possible, preparing for enemies that had not yet revealed themselves because humanity had learned the most important lesson in the universe. Peace was not the absence of war. Peace was having the strength to end any war before it could truly begin. And somewhere in the vast darkness between galaxies, ancient things stirred and plotted, unaware that they were being watched by a species that had made survival into an art form. The galaxy was safe, protected by shepherds who had been forged in the fires of extinction and tempered by the knowledge that sometimes the only way to preserve life was to perfect the art of ending it. The small fleet had returned home, but its promise remained. Humanity would defend the galaxy from any threat, no matter how impossible it seemed. Because that was what survivors did. They adapted, they endured, and they made sure everyone else got to survive too.